Hi, where do I begin? My name's Philip Hornby. I was involved in a RTA 35 years ago. The result being, I spent 9, 10 months in hospital. Head injuries, broken bones, couldn't say a word, don't recognise people, don't recognise faces. Couldn't read or write after the accident. Could spell just about. Welcome to my world. It came into realization when I was in hospital. At that time, you are sky high on every drug going, and your mind, you're still in a recovery state. You're still a hospital patient, and you're still suffering. So who knows what it could have been. But then they clicked on and they realized that there was something going wrong with my facial recognition. And from there, it just developed. I had scans done, MRIs done. You name it, I've had it done. Well, they didn't believe it at first. Well, they believed it, but they found it hard to... I believe they found it hard to grasp. At that time, the M11 didn't exist. The roundabout didn't exist. None of this here existed. None of that existed. It was just a road going straight down. Council bloke was coming out from here. I was driving down back from London from up there on your right hand side, and I ended up on a ditch the other side of the road, back to front.
My name's Malcolm Cowan. I live in Manchester, married with 3 grown-up sons and grandchildren. I work as a software designer doing websites, database-driven websites, and also bespoke software for small companies. I've been doing that for about 45 years now. Last 25 of them as a freelance. I'm not sure I have much spare time. My work takes up quite a lot of it. I'm one of the leadership team at our local church, and I do some writing for fun, and that's both for stories, also as part of my wife's drama group. I do have problems, particularly with people who are roughly the same age and roughly the same sort of physical appearance. I find it difficult to distinguish between them. There's no trace of any injury as a child, and the researchers reckon it was probably developmental, meaning from birth or before birth. Mm-hmm. I think the worst thing was as a kid at school, all the kids play football in the playground, and I used to hate it because I could never work out who was on which side. So I never knew who to kick the ball to, and it was really difficult and unpleasant for me to play team games. I got out of them if I could. If I couldn't, the best strategy I found was to run enthusiastically towards the ball, making sure that someone else gets there first.
Hi, my name's Steve Goldstone. I'm 52 and I'm a self-employed or partially self-employed web designer stroke software developer. I like photography, I sing a couple of choirs, and I cycle, and I do sort of hill walking. Yeah, my day-to-day life is really, it's fairly humdrum. I sort of take the dog for a walk, and then if I've got work, I'll go and do that. I think I've always had it. I think it's genetic. I think my dad's got it. We've never talked about it really, which is a bit stupid. But he's clearly the same as me. My sister and my brother don't seem to have it, or my mum as well, and they just always surprised when me and my dad don't recognise people. They just sort of think we're stupid. I first remembered it as a problem, I think, when I went to university. Before that, at school, there's always enough people. You always knew where everybody was, and you could tell who they were by all sorts of things, where they sat, who they were with. So it wasn't such a big problem growing up. I think it was more in adult life. It's far more of an issue.
My name's Charlotte Hornby and I am a daughter to Philip Hornby. When I was younger, I didn't understand the full history of the accident, but obviously as I got older, around 11, 12, I understand more about it, and I've met people who worked with my dad, so I understood more about the accident and why he had the accident and why he's lost half his memory due to the accident. So
Was it confusing?
When I was younger, growing up, I'd say yes it was, because obviously I didn't understand why he would call people different names and why he couldn't recognise certain things, but as I've learnt more about it, I understand why he did what he did then. So it's quite a few times where he's mixed up people's names, but then once I explain why, they understand why, and they sort of just get used to it every time they come around the house now. The understanding to me is my dad cannot recognise fruit, people, animals, sometimes places. The only way he'd probably do it is with people is by voices, or like the way they look sometimes, or the way they are dressed with their hair. Occasionally we go out and we do things like if we have to go food shopping and he doesn't understand or recognise what kind of fruit or food he's got to buy, sometimes I sort of help him. But yeah, I do help my dad on a day-to-day basis sometimes with certain things. So.
Okay. Because we did kind of learn phonetically. What are you laughing at?
I'm just reading. This is quite nice, actually.
Is it a good translation?
It's
a lullaby.
Yeah, I know. At work, I work freelance now, so I'm working in my own office, and normally I'm speaking to people over the phone, so that's not a problem. But if I'm ever in an office, then it is a problem, and the strategy I've adopted, first time you go into any office, you make a note of who sits where, and then if you want to speak to anybody, make sure that they're sat at their desk. And assuming that the person sat at their desk is them is almost certainly right, and that saves me from any embarrassment. But if I ever have to speak to people away from their place of work, then that's more difficult.
I do sometimes wonder how he gets on, and I think as soon as he gets back, one of my first questions is always, how did you get on? And I don't just mean how did it go at work, but how did you relate to people?
Well, married, the children have all grown up and left home now, but they've known from being fairly young that I have problems with facial recognition. They have been known to take advantage of it. My granddaughter, for example, if I've ever collected her from school, what I normally do is wait for the child that looks at me and acknowledges me, and then work out who it must be from that. So what my granddaughter has done on occasion is walk straight past me, ignoring me, knowing that I can't distinguish her from all the other children. I do sometimes have problems. For example, we met some friends a few years ago and met them casually in the street and had no idea who they were. And I panicked and tried to hide the fact, and in the end had to admit, I'm not sure who you are, please tell me. Which felt very lame and very silly.
It affects my day-to-day life quite a lot. I think the large part is sort of the sort of isolation, because you sort of develop strategies which have to me anyway, I find makes me avoid people to a large extent, because if you talk to people, then it's quite possible that the next time you meet them, even if it's an hour later, you won't recognise them at all, and then they're going to be offended. I suppose it affects family life a little bit less because it's much more ordered. You know where people are. So if my daughter's here, I know it's her and I can recognise her to a large extent. It could be a bit awkward when you're meeting relatives, like if you're meeting relatives in a pub, you've not seen them for a while, I won't recognise them. But usually in that case I can rely on them recognising me, so I can sort of just then pretend that I've not recognised them. My daughter knows, I think, that I don't recognise people, so she perhaps adapts a little bit to that. So it's, I think, in a close family it's not such a big problem. As you get more and more people in a wider family, it becomes more of an issue because they again expect you to recognise them. So it can make it a bit awkward, but normally I can sort of cope by hoping they recognise me.
That's Kate. I got the hairstyle and also the expression on the face. That's typical Kate. She's with Kate. She's black, therefore I assume it's probably Clarice.
Right. Well, can you? Why can't you tell immediately that's Clarice?
I do. I work it out immediately.
Who's that one then?
No idea.
It's the same person.
The hair. The hair's different.
That's Kate.
I couldn't see the hair that well enough.
That is the same.
Right.
And that was taken half an hour after that one. Okay.
Is that Neil?
Yes, that's your son.
Right. Right.
That's easy, because he was on the news yesterday. No, this morning. It looks like, what's his name? US President Obama. Why I picked up on him instantly is because of his hairstyle. His teeth, his jawbone always move. It's a significant feature of his face. His jawbone, his smile, the way he speaks. That is President Obama. Who the hell is that? Pass, don't know. It could be a bus driver. Who do I know? Council worker? Council chairman? Prime Minister?
Yeah, they are. You got him now.
The hair confused me. The hair and the expression on his face, the lips in particular, confused me that time. That confused me. I had really no idea. Literally.
Does that frustrate you?
Yes, it does. Because now I feel like an imbecile. I feel that I feel like I'm being a prat.
Yes, it can be. It can be, like anywhere else, it can be hard to recognise the characters. But if it's drama, then it can be really difficult because you can only keep track of people based upon very simple differences. We'll probably lose the touch of who's doing what, and I just won't be able to follow it at all. So if I'm watching with somebody else, I'll be, who's that? What's going on? What's happening? Who's that? And it annoys everybody else who's watching it because they just think it's stupid. Well, you can see what's happening, it's because I can't. So usually at the end of a film I'll say, well, what happened there? Because I can't follow the plot because it's too confusing. But something interesting here is when I'm washing up, is where I'm washing up here. The neighbour does their washing up as well in that window over there. So usually we'll wave at each other or something if we're washing up together. And but it's odd because I recognise her there because I know she's in the house. I know she's called Avril. I know that's her. If I meet her in the street, I might guess it might be her because she's going towards her house, but I wouldn't know. It's not like somebody would. If I saw her in town, I wouldn't catch her eye at all. I wouldn't recognise her, and so I could walk straight past her, and she'd think, stuck up git, Well, it's very hard to think of the most embarrassing thing because so many things do happen. But I suppose one thing that does jump to mind is a few years ago I was in a social and went for a meal with some friends from somewhere I used to work with, and known all these people for about 10 years or so, getting on for that. And I was talking to somebody who I wasn't quite sure who he was. I thought it must be somebody new. And I was talking to him, and it was an interesting conversation. And he said something. He said, "Oh, my friend Chris Butler. He used to do that." And he said, this look of complete, astonishment on his face. "But I'm Chris Butler." And so I sort of said, "Oh yes, well I knew that," but there was really no way to recover from that. There was just nothing you could say.
I don't recognise anyone, whether it be my own daughter or the guy who owns a restaurant. I couldn't tell the difference between a cow, a bull and a sheep. Sometimes it does annoy me. In fact, it annoys me a lot, all the time.
The thing I look for most is something abnormal. So it doesn't really go down well to say you recognise somebody because they've got a big nose, or in the case of two of my teachers at school, I could distinguish them because one had a big boil on the back of his head. So I never ever owned up to that one. But of course, any time you talk to the teacher, it's all look round and try and see the back of his head and work out which one you're talking to.
Well, when we go out together, I tend to have to take the lead and find out who people are, unless he does. And then to say to him, if we're in a party situation, that's so-and-so, this is so-and-so, or this is... And then he's okay. If we're going out to a film, it's a nightmare. Particularly if there's a lot going on and a lot of action, I have to be able to follow it, know the names of the actors or the characters, and tell him that's so-and-so. Because I don't have that disability, I cannot imagine what it must be like for him. So I find it puzzling and a little bit frustrating at times, because I just want to be able to sit back and enjoy something, but I have to keep thinking, oh, that's so-and-so, and tell him. It can be frustrating, but we've been married 40 odd years and you learn to live with it and you adjust your life to it.
Well, I think it's really just a simple thing to say. It's an inability to recognise faces, but it's really, I think, an inability to distinguish faces. So all faces look similar to me. I can tell. I can look at faces. I can see faces. It's not like a bloatable blob or anything.
Do you ever wish you didn't have this condition?
Oh yes, all the time. But there's obviously nothing I can do about it. And I can't think of any benefit to having it. I know I occasionally look at these forums and there are some people who say yes, it's got this and that benefit, but I've not really encountered anything. I've never thought, oh, it's fantastic not being able to recognise those people.
Okay, right. Okay, see you then. Bye.
Do you ever wish you didn't have the condition, Malcolm?
Oh yes, it made life much easier. But tough, that's the way it is. It would have been nice if it hadn't been there. But on the other hand, in that case, would it have been me? I don't know.
He's got so much else wrong with him. He's having to cope with so much, because he has a twisted spine. he's got the result of an accident whereby his right leg doesn't work properly. He's in pain all the time. Now also having to cope with this, I sometimes really feel very, very sorry for him, and yeah, I could cry for him sometimes.
Do you ever wish your dad didn't have?
No, not at all. Because it's just the way he is. It's just, you're normal to me, even though you are different. He's exactly the same as everybody else, but he's just got a memory loss, and everybody else, you know, maybe have a memory loss like my dad, and they learn to cope with it, and their family learn to cope with it like I've learned to cope with it.
I fell in love with him as he was. So, you know, he's Malcolm, and no, he's him. He's special.
I'm not sure what that means.